Before we do anything else, I want you to know that you are being recorded and your voice carries out into the nation. People are listening to everything you say. In order to move forward with tonight's presentation, we have to make sure that your voice is in good working order. Now, there's going to be a lot of funny things said tonight, but you won't really know what they are. Probably because our humor is so intelligent, it's just going to go right over your head. But it's because of this, I'd like to practice the laughs, just to see if you can laugh appropriately. First off, let's try a medium laugh. If we're on a scale of, like this, let's do a medium laugh. On the count of 3. 1, 2. All right. Now, let's pretend that you just heard the funniest joke of your entire life. A joke probably involving questionable morals. A joke that might have something to do about someone's mother. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, now, let's try a joke that, let's call this the bless your heart joke. This is a joke that might have been funny at one time, 100 years ago, but today it just doesn't land. But bless Sean's heart. We're going to laugh to be nice anyway. You're going to hear a lot of those tonight. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think the writing is on the wall. I want to thank you for being out here tonight. We're going to play a song here that expresses the love that we feel for this wonderful, wonderful town. Let's go down to Alabama. Let's go down to Columbiana, where the folks are nice and that tea's on ice. Let's go down to Alabama. Let's go down let's go down to Alabama. Let's go down and see that man who makes barbecue for me and you. Let's go down to Alabama. Half an hour south of Birmingham is a town called Columbiana, where them folks are sweet, they'll even tickle your feet. Let's go down to Alabama, to Alabama. Let's go down to Alabama. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome to the stage Davis Little and Haley Black. Give them a warm Columbiana welcome if you would. Which one is Davis and which one is Haley? And now I'd also like to welcome to the stage Dwayne Two and Aaron Peters. Now you might notice, if you are a astute person, that on this stage are not one, not two, but three fiddles. There's this fiddle here, there's that fiddle there, and there's a bass fiddle. And I thought it would only be fitting if we could play a fiddle tune. What do y'all think? Yeah. Let's hear the Swallowtail Jig. These guys, huh? We got Haley Black and Davis Little. That's really hard for me. Haley Little really goes well together. Not trying to suggest anything, but these two guys, come up here, come up to the microphone, and tell me how you learned how to play music. You say you're not even real sure how it started.
Not really sure.
Yeah.
There was a piano in the house. I remember that much.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indian Springs.
In Indian Springs?
Yeah, right down
And there
the
was
road.
a piano in the house?
Piano in the house. My mom played a little bit. And, well, Santa brought a guitar one year. It took me a few years of asking, but once the guitar came, it was all downhill from there, I guess.
I've always heard that the best way to get a guitar player off your porch is to pay him for the pizza.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
And Haley, not little but black. How did you learned how to play when you were 3 years old? You said.
Yeah, I started when I was 3, and my mom took me to a violin concert, and by the time it was over, she was like, "All right, let's go," and I just started bursting out crying. She's like, "What?" I'm like, "I thought I was gonna get to play," and so she was like, "Well, I guess we'll have to start lessons." So I did, and I played classical for a long time, and kind of gave it up for a little while, just like wanting some, I guess I wanted improvisation in my life because I found that later. I was like, oh yeah, I can do that on the violin. And so I found a crowd similar to this, playing similar stuff. And ever since then I've been hooked, so here I am.
So you made a leap from classical music into, what would you call, what is your love interest musically? Jazz?
That's hard. Just music in general, anything that I can have some self-expression with. Yeah, jazz, bluegrass, even classical. But just I don't want to be stuck to stuck to some sheet music all the time.
And right now you're going to play for us after you've just given us that. You're going to play for us a Brazilian tune. Wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Bossa Nova.
give it to us. I'm telling you, how about these guys? How about you give us a little bit of that softly is in a morning sunrise that you were doing? Yeah, this is going to involve the band. This is going to involve Dwayne. This is going to involve Aaron. This is going to involve everybody. Dietrich and Davis Little, everybody. Now I'm going to play a song that features Aaron on the fiddle, and this features Dwayne 2 on the biscuit box guitar. What are you going to play for us, Dwayne?
We'll do a little bit of 9-pound hammer for you there. We're in the key of G if y'all keeping up. Thank y'all very much.
How about these guys, huh? Aaron Peters and Dwayne, too. They're going to be back here in a little bit. Now, the way that I learned piano was my daddy got me one when I was 9 years old. And some of the first recordings that I ever had to listen to were from Charlie Parker. And he was playing all sorts of songs that I could not figure out or decipher. And so I had a record player that I turned on to half speed. And it slowed the songs all the way down so that it was like this. And it got real slow. And I listened to his piano player play, and I learned how to play that way, real slow. And the first time that I ever played in church, I got to church, and we played through the song. And when it was done, my mother said, "Well, I was proud of you today, but why were you playing like it was a funeral?" And that was exactly how I learned how to play the piano. I'd like to play that piano with these people here. But before I do, I'd also like to give a shout out to my aunt and uncle here tonight. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary. It wasn't long ago that they were Christmas shopping at a department store together. And my uncle, he don't like the department store shopping. He was with my Aunt Bunny, and she was with him, and she was looking through all sorts of girly things. And my uncle just dematerialized into thin air. She could not find him anywhere around. She lifted her phone out of her pocket. She said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Hey, now, honey, before you get angry with me, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember something. Do you remember when we first got together? Do you remember that store? And in that store, you found a very expensive diamond tennis bracelet that you fell in love with. And do you remember that I said to you that if I ever had the means, one day I would go back to that store and I would purchase that for you?" There were tears running down my aunt's face. And she said, yes, I remember that story. He said, "Well, good. I'm in the golf shop next door to that." Is that really the best you got? We're going to play a rhythm changes tune here for you. This is called Anthropology. B flat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Thrasher. A little Steve Ramos in your life. Took a monkey for a ride in the air, and the monkey thought that everything was on the square. And the buzzard tried to throw the monkey off his back, and the monkey grabbed a hold and said, "Now listen, Jack, straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Ooh, straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. 'Cause what is the use in jiving? Ain't no use in thriving. I don't know what I told. Said straighten up and fly right. Ooh, straighten up and stay right. Say, straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
check earlier, and it felt really nice, so we wanted to do it again. Thank you all very much.
How about these guys? What in the world? Now y'all two are together, correct?
Sean.
Together. Yeah. How long have you been, together?
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years. And you were telling me a little bit backstage about how you met. How do two exceptional musicians meet and decide that they want to take on the burden of romance?
We'll try to keep this short.
Yeah. I was playing a gig. It was kind of like a put-together gig, a bunch of jazz musicians. And Haley was on the same gig. I didn't know her. All of a sudden, this beautiful violin girl comes on stage, and I'm like, wow, who is that? So after the show, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and take my shot here, So I go up to Haley. I'm like, hey, can I buy you a beer? She's like, no, I'm fine. And so kind of missed that shot there, but...
She shut you down?
She shut me down, yeah, but what was it, maybe 6 or 7 months later, all of a sudden I get she slides into my DMs, as they say.
Now,
she
what does that mean?
She sends me a message on Facebook. She says, hey, who are you? It's nice to know you. And I was like, okay, cool. She doesn't remember.
I was like, I'm surprised that we haven't met before, you know?
Right, yeah.
And
But
then
we
you're
have
like,
met.
oh, well, actually, we've played together.
So,
And I offered you a drink.
so you didn't remember that you had met him before.
No.
So first impressions, I'm not really
That's-
sure about those anymore, you know?
I remember looking back into the files, like
Right.
deep in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, I do remember him offering me a drink. Like, what was I thinking? Like, yeah. So anyway, I wasn't
So
available.
there is some remorse. There is some remorse on your part. You're a forgiven.
Yes, the
You are
remorse of
forgiven.
having to tell this story over and over.
Right, yeah, this is the punishment.
You know, men and women are different. They are different. They are different. They are different. I'm not even sure that we should be cohabitating together. Did you know that in the womb, in the first 7 weeks, every single one of us is female? Did you know that? And until 7 weeks, testosterone washes through the system of the pregnant mother and ruins the brain of baby boy. And the only people laughing at that are women because you know it's true. But it's okay. Testosterone is a great desensitizer. It's a scientific chemical hormone produced by the body that makes you desensitized toward pain. And boys need this because they're going to be the protector and the provider. And this is why we don't cry when we fall off our bikes, and we're very tough. And as a society, we've embraced this. You know that? It's really true. When a baby girl is born, what do? We buy her pink blankets, pink ribbons, pink booties. When a baby boy is born, what does he get? Circumcised. This is why when we fall down the driveway and skin our knee, we say, "You think that hurt?" The doctor did something to me in the hospital. I didn't walk for a year. On that note, we're going to play a song together about romance. This is Shady Grove.
Shady Grove, my little love. Shady Grove, my darling. Shady Grove, my little love. I'm going back to Harlan. Shady Grove, my little love. Shady Grove, my darling. Shady Grove, my little love. I'm going back to Harlan. Apples in the summertime, peaches in the fall. If I can't have the girl I love, I won't have none at all. The Shady Grove, my little love. Shady Grove, my darling. Shady Grove, my little love. I'm going back to Harlan.
Went to see my Shady Grove. She was standing in the door with her shoes and stockings in her hand and her little bare feet on the floor. Say, Shady Grove, my little love. Shady Grove, I say. Shady Grove, my little love. I'm bound to go away.
was just a little boy, I wanted a Barlow knife. Now that I'm a grown man, I'll marry me my wife. Shady Grove, my little love, Shady Grove, my darling, Shady Grove, my little love, I'm going back to Harlem.
How about these guys, huh? Now I'd like to welcome onto the stage Aaron Peters and Dwayne too and the rest of the guys. We're going to play a song for you that is extraordinarily important to me. The origins of this song come from upstate New York when a man who is a friend of a man who you probably know, a man who lives in Birmingham, Alabama, named Bobby Horton. There's always about 50% of the audience who knows and loves Bobby Horton. Bobby is really the mayor of Birmingham, I believe. And Bobby Horton, of course, did the music for the Ken Burns films all the way back to the beginning. He's done, I believe, 29 films. Yes, yes. And his buddy Jay Unger was ending a fiddle camp up in upstate New York. And the fiddle camp was coming to an end. They all learned some wonderful things at the fiddle camp. And all the children were going home, and all the adults were on the buses going back home out of the beautiful, beautiful valley where Lake Ashokan is. And he was sitting there on the lake with his fiddle, and he came up with a song put to a familiar melody. Would you play that for us? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, oh, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see 'twas grace that taught my heart to fear. Grace, my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Ooh, some glad morning when this life is over. Whoa, I'm gonna fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. Lord, I'm gonna fly away. I'll fly away. Oh, glory. Ooh, I'm gonna fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, Lord, I'm gonna fly away. Just a few more weary days, and then, ooh, I'm gonna fly to a home joy shall never end. Ooh, I'm fly away. Fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, ooh, I'm gonna fly away. Lord, I'm gonna fly away to a place it's gonna be my forever home. Lord God, I'm gonna fly away. Yeah, fly away. Lord, I'm gonna fly. I'm gonna fly. When I die, hallelujah, bye bye. I'm gonna fly. didn't I? I'm gonna fly way. We're gonna take a short intermission. We'll be back very soon. You know the night's going downhill when you see the banjo. You know how you tell the stage is level. You know how to tell if the stage that you're watching, music being played on is level. If the drool on the banjo player's mouth is equal distances from his chin. Ladies and gentlemen, I had a wonderful privilege come up to me not very long ago, wherein I got to play at a very, very famous theater in Nashville, Tennessee. It was a part of the family tree of a radio show that was started in 1927 when one of the radio hosts in Nashville, WSM, got on a man on the radio and asked him just to play the fiddle. It was Uncle Bunt Stevens was the old man's name who played that fiddle. And he played a song called Sail Away, Ladies, Sail Away. And that music was so popular, this fiddle music on the radio, that this show kept going. And one night, when a man named George Hay was narrating the show, he knew that after his show that he played on WSM, there would be another show following his, which was the opera from New York City. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, every week when I'm done doing this show, you hear the grand old opera after me. But this week, you're going to hear the grand old Opry. And I was so humbled. I walked into that place, and the first person I met was Dolly Parton's manager. Emerson was his name. Emerson Biggins. Anyway, I had the wonderful pleasure of playing at that beautiful place. And I'd like to introduce you to the guys, my friends, who came there and played with me. Would you like to meet them? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage my friends and yours, and my band and yours, the Grand Old Optimists. Now we're going to play one that features our beautiful fiddle player here, Aaron Peters. And we ask that before you play this, Aaron, that you would let your hair down.
Sean, I just put it up.
Well, Aaron, you told me we were going to play this like it was the cover of a Harlequin romance novel.
I've already got product in it and everything.
Well, you at least play it like your hair's down. It's a spirit thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Christmas, everybody.
We're gonna play an original song, but we're gonna start off with an old time song.
Yeah.
Y'all know about old time music, right? You know, like bluegrass and stuff. Well, when you have a fiddle in the band, you got to play old time music every now and again. But we decided to go back as far as we could, old time, and we found this song from the year 100 CE. This is some real old time music here. This is actually one of the first written pieces of music that they've discovered. It's the oldest one they've found so far.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What's the nation of origin?
Greece. Ancient Greece. Yeah, I guess it was Turkey at the time, right? Is that right?
Check.
Oh, yeah.
Modern day Turkey.
Modern day Turkey, but it was
Ancient
Greece.
Greece.
Yeah, ancient Greece.
A religious song?
You know, it was written on a gravestone, and it had musical notation and some lyrics with it, and I'd say it's spiritual, at least. You know, there's lyrics that go with it, and Haley sometimes sings those lyrics. Would you?
Yeah, I'll sing it for you.
Yeah.
It goes, while you live, shine, have no grief at all. Life exists only for a short while, and time demands his due.
So that was the melody. Yeah. That's the melody and the lyrics, and now we took that melody and kind of did our own thing with it.
All right, what's it called?
It's called the Epitaph of Sikelos.
Okay, the Epitaph of Sikelos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Some old time music. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, this next song is it's the first song we ever wrote together.
Yeah,
It's
5
called-
years ago.
5 years ago, that's right. This is called Layla Zula.
Yeah.
Give it up for these guys. Give it up. I can't tell you how much I love summer. Summer to me is the most infectious time of year. It's the time, especially this part of the year, when I can remember my mother taking me to go pick out school clothes. We'd sit on the porch. And my mother would talk about the things that were about to be coming ahead for us this year. And it always sounded a whole lot like a death sentence. She'd talk about how we were going to have this in our schedule, and this in our schedule, and that in our schedule, and you had to do this in your schedule, and that, and don't forget this is going to happen, and this. She'd plan the whole year out, just like she was really just getting everything together, like a person who's planning their will. And one of those things was going to get school clothes. School clothes, I'll never forget it. She would walk us into the Sears, the little Sears. And in the back of Sears, there was a section for boys who were a little bit too chubby to fit into traditional Levi's. They were called I'm among friends. We'd go in there and we'd get them pants, and she'd open them up. They had two styles. They had jeans and corduroy. You put your legs in, one leg in one hole, one leg in the other, and she'd go like this, like trying to get a king-size pillowcase into a single pillow. She'd pull the buttons tight, and I was humiliated to be a chubby little red-headed boy. And then she'd lift up my shirt, and she'd expose my little white muffin top. And she'd get her lips and go. I was 15 years old. And then it'd be time to go to school, and we'd go to school, and I'd walk through the hallways wearing my husky jeans, and my mother, she would make me tuck in my shirts, which wasn't a good look if you were a little bit overweight. It made you look like a 47-year-old Baptist preacher. And I'd walk through the hallways, and they'd all look at me, and because I was wearing these jeans, these special jeans, which had a paper patch above the right cheek, it said in bold impact writing, Husky, just in case there was any doubt as to what you were. I walk through the hallways and they say, hey, Husky, how you doing, Husky? Hey, Husky, how you doing, Husky? It was a horrible way to start the school year. And that's how I did it. I was red-headed, curly corkscrew red hair. I had buck teeth. I had buckshot freckles and 2 ears that looked like a Ford F-150 driving down the road with both doors open. But we spent a lot of time whenever we had the last waning days of summer to ourselves. We spent our time running through the woods. We lived in the woods. We spent every single moment we had free in the woods. We did not have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have nothing to keep us busy but each other. And so we'd hop on our little one-speed bikes, and we'd look for our friends, and you could always tell where your friends were because your friends had their bicycles ditched in the front yard of some household. And when you saw more than 5 or 6 bikes, you knew your friends were there. And we'd ditch our bikes. Right as we were mid-air, we'd jump off the bikes, and the bike would roll into that load of bikes, and we'd saunter up to the door. We'd knock on the door. So-and-so's mother would come out, and she would look us directly in the eye, and we would maintain direct eye contact with her, and we would say, can Margaret come out and play? We had no problems talking directly to adults. We didn't look down. We weren't embarrassed. We didn't have attention deficit disorder. We said, can Margaret come out and play? And she'd say, yes. And she'd call Margaret, Margaret! And she'd come out, and Margaret and all her friends would come out, and we'd do all sorts of things, all sorts of things. I can remember us playing kissing games. Love that about the summer, them kissing games. Kids would draw a circle in the middle of the floor. And the rule was the boy had to stand in the middle of the circle, and the girls could either kiss him or pay a tip or a fine. I made $21.34. It's sad because I understand that bicycles are kind of a thing of the past these days. They said in a recent study conducted by a very fancy organization that between the years of 1920 and 2010, 70% of school children rode bicycles. But between the years 2010 and present day, the number has dwindled to 7%. We're a different world now. But I can still remember those days. And we would drive along on those bikes until we got to a very specific porch that I can recall. Her name was Loretta Sue. She was an old woman. And she'd sit out there on that porch and she'd rock and you could hear the sounds of her porch. There are sounds on a porch that go. And if you have a glider, the glider goes, whaloom, 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 whaloom. And the swing goes. And if there's a dog nearby, he's going. And if there's an old man nearby, he's going. And there's an art to doing that. You have to do your weight dispersion just right. Sister Loretta Sue, she'd sit on that porch. Now, she was a Methodist. We had never known many Methodists. I was raised as a Deepwater Baptist. We were fundamentalist people. My mother had the biggest problem with Methodists because Methodists, she would say, his name was not John the Sprinkler. He did not march people out to the middle of the River Jordan only to douse them with 1 tablespoon of water. Now, the reason I bring this up is because if I can just help save one Methodist tonight. Loretta Sue was a Methodist, and she'd sit out there all by herself, rocking on that chair. And we'd pull up on our bicycles, and we'd come up because she always had a huge 2-gallon jug of iced tea sitting there, and that stuff was sweet enough to break your jaw. Because if you are a Methodist child, if you don't already have type 2 diabetes by the age of 12, are you even trying? And we'd get a big old cup that she had there, these styrofoam cups, and we'd fill it up, and we'd sit down on the chairs with her. I'd take the swing, my cousin Ed Lee would take the glider, and we'd listen to her talk and tell stories about the old days. And she had such wonderful stories. She'd talk about riding through in them old hills with her and her early husband, and they would ride through until they find a little fishing hole, and they'd jump out, and they had poles that they made out of cane right there, river cane. They just brought little bits of string and bobbers with them, and they'd fish, and they'd fish all day. She told us stories about what it was like growing up in that old world, and we would listen. And we loved to hear her talk because it brought back another era to us. It brought back the era of our ancestors. And for a moment in time, as we got high on caffeine and sugar, we touched our ancestors, and it felt so good and gratifying. And she told us the story about when her husband, who was a carpenter, a woodworker, was working out in his woodshed where he did his work, and he was building the altar of God for the First Methodist Church. And it was made out of wood and parquet flooring, and it had this big curved piece of fascia, so that the minister could walk right out into the people and really see them sweat. And he was working on this, and it takes steam to bend wood. And that wood, in order to have an arc, would be placed into a large pipe. And steam would be pumped into that pipe until that wood was nice and moist and wet. And then it would be brought out, and it would be bent by powerful men until it maintained that perfect curve. Well, there were steam kettles underneath this metal pipe, steaming that wood, flames flying high. And the flames caught that dried wood, and it turned that woodshed into smoke and ash. And he lost his livelihood in one day. And they stood out back, and they watched this shed burn, Loretta Sue and her husband. And he wept like a little baby, she said. He wept like a little child. I've never seen a grown man weep that way before, Sean. He didn't know what he was going to do to feed us. He didn't know what he was going to do, and those were hard times, you know. And it was the very next day, she said. The very next day, I woke up and I heard something in the front yard. And there were these wagons coming up the road. You couldn't access our road back then by a car, so you had to park at the end of the road where the big culvert is, and you'd take a wagon up. And there were these wagons coming up that little dirt road. And they were hauled by mules, and on the back of that wagon was lumber, fresh lumber. Oh, Sean, 3 or 4 big old wagons of lumber. And she'd take a sip of her sweet tea. And she'd say, do you know that I sat on this porch and I watched men from the local Methodist church rebuild my husband's woodshed from scratch until it was all brand new, and it was even nicer than before. Can you believe that? And we'd sit and we'd rock and we'd sip. And then she'd tell us about things like the ground itch. You ever heard of the ground itch? The ground itch, for those of you who don't know, is what happens to a child who runs around barefoot and steps in dog dookie. There's a little worm that embeds itself into your heel and it crawls up your thigh. All the way up, all the way up. She said, Sean, I had a ground itch worm crawl all the way up to my belly button and come out. We said, yes, ma'am, we'll wear shoes from now on. Well, I can remember when I was 14 years old, I was looking at the newspaper sitting on our front porch. It was the end of summer. I'll never forget it. It was August. And I was sitting out there with my mother. And in that newspaper, I saw that it said in the obituaries, which were my favorite things to read, because we use language that you don't use much anymore. Brother so-and-so has gone on to the heavenly inheritance. Sister so-and-so has evaporated into that kingdom in the sky of celestial honor. And it said right there, Sister Loretta has gone on to glory. And I cried because I remembered her, and I remembered the stories, and I remembered the love that she showed to us little boys. I remembered the grilled cheese sandwiches she used to make on her little iron skillet, and she'd peel the crust off that bread. And I remember that Campbell's tomato soup that she'd make. She'd open it up with her little frail hands and pour it into that little pot. And then she'd get milk, and she'd pour it in there, and that milk looked like cottage cheese coming out of the bottle. But we ate it anyway. Well, I called up my cousin Ed Lee. I said, Ed Lee, have you seen the paper? He said, no. What would I want to do that for? I said, Ed Lee, Sister Loretta is dead. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no. He said, well, I can't believe that. Who's going to get the house? I said, I don't know anything about that, but I do know one thing. It says here that her funeral is on Friday. And on Friday, Ed Lee, you and me, Margaret, a few of the boys, we're all going to go. We're going to go attend her funeral. He said, I think that's a good idea. I don't have any clothes. I said, I'll blend you a pair of my husky corduroys. We all got on our bicycles on that Friday afternoon, and we rode all the way into town to Sister Loretta's funeral. And the Methodist church was packed. There were cars everywhere. They were all parked cattywampus like worker bees around the hive. And we got out, and we walked in, and I was wearing my nicest pressed shirt. I wore my nicest clip-on tie. I had my pants pressed so sharp that you could have cut tomatoes with them. Ed Lee's hair was stuck to his forehead with his mama's own spit. We all walked into that church, just us kids, and we sat in the back. And we listened to this man talk about Sister Loretta. We saw that big old casket up front. We listened to that sermon. The Methodists give a great funeral sermon. They'd say things like, God loves you, and even today, I want you to know that Sister Loretta would want you to know that you can give your life to Christ if you need redemption tonight. And we would listen. It wasn't nothing compared to a Baptist sermon. Baptist sermons do all that too, except we do it for 2 or 3 hours. And when that sermon came to an end, the preacher man said, anybody in this congregation who has something to share about Sister Loretta, come up here and share it with us. We would like to remember her firsthand through the memories that accompanied her existence. Well, people started forming a line at the stage. I could not believe it. I had never told a story in all my life. And many of you, I can see looking at me, understand why. But something inside me told me I needed to get up and contribute to this wonderful woman's memory. I shot up. Ed Lee said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to go tell a story about her." He said, "What story?" I said, "I'm going to tell some of the things she told us on the porch." He said, "Okay." I stood in line and I waited. Man, the one thing I learned about Methodists in that little time that I waited in line is that Methodists love to hear the sound of their own voice. Man, there were guys up there who started talking and they didn't stop until someone drugged them off the stage. One man was up there and he started talking about Sister Loretta, but somehow he got into talking about his second wife. It got very awkward. People came up and they shared their stories and they shared their stories. And when it was my turn to get up there, I was shaking. I had never been in public doing anything like this, opening my mouth before. And I stood up there in front of everybody. And as I spoke, there was this little white drop screen behind the altar. And I was talking about Miss Loretta and about the woodshed that burned down and how the people came together and rebuilt this shed and changed their lives with their kindness. And as I spoke on this little white drop screen, pictures began to rotate. They were old pictures. Pictures from the 1920s, black and white. From the 30s, where people posed in front of their Buicks and their cars. Entire families standing before those chrome bumpers. You could never do that in front of your Kia today. And then the 40s came along, and she was with a man who was in an Air Corps uniform. And the 50s came along, and the fins on the back of the car were tall enough to slice telephone wires. And the 60s came along, and she was wearing polyester. And the 70s came along, she was wearing floral print polyester. The 80s came along, and it looked like someone had cut her hair with a weed eater. The 90s came along, and as I was looking at that, I thought to myself, something's wrong here. And I walked toward the edge of the altar, and I looked into that casket. And I realized I had never seen that woman before in my life. I looked out at the crowd, and they were all looking at me like a dog looks at a ceiling fan. All these stories I'd been telling, the woman on the screen behind me, she had midnight black hair in her youth. My Loretta was a redhead. This was bad. Oh, it was bad. And folks, I did what all Southern Baptist men do when they're caught between a rock and a hard place. I just kept on talking. I told stories I didn't even know that I had. I was telling stories about people I ain't never even met before. They were just coming out of me. I had never, ever done this before. And after about 15 minutes, there was a man by the side of the stage who was standing with the preacher. And that preacher came up, and he grabbed me by the arm, and he kind of ushered me off the stage. And we got down to that little floor level. And there was a man standing there, an old man, who was dressed in a tweed coat, and he looked at me, and he shook my hand. He said, "Thank you for that, son." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Loretta's husband. Who the hell are you?" I said, "Sir, once you've met one Miss Loretta, you've met them all." I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of His voice is so sweet. Birds hush their singing, yeah, and the melody that He brings to me within my heart is ringing, and He walks with me, and He talks with me. He tells me I am His own. Yeah, the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with Him all night. Around us is falling, but He bids me go with a voice of woe. His heart in me is calling, and He walks with me, yeah, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, Lord, none other has ever known. None other has ever known. Thank you very much. If you would, welcome up to the stage the rest of the band, if you would. Dwayne Two, Haley Black, Davis Little, and am I missing someone? Aaron Peters, my goodness gracious. Come on out here. There's a song that we have to play together before we leave, a song that we just absolutely have to play together. And it's a song I imagine everybody knows because our mothers used to sing it to us right before they put us to sleep. I'm talking about the Jimi Hendrix song,